So I picked this up as I walked up here because I thought I would hold it up here in front of me while I tell you that we're running long in the worship service today. Too bad this wasn't like Captain America's shield to be able to like protect me or something like that. But here's what I need you to know. It's all God's time, so let's not worry about it. So this sermon series, I know I had somebody say to me, seriously, that's what you're going to do for a sermon series? That person, let me tell you, is not a Marvel fan. But I didn't realize I was going to do this sermon series until about a month and a half ago. A month and a half ago, I started watching the movies that you have to watch before you get to Endgame. Because if you go to the movie to see Endgame and you haven't seen all of the history of the Avengers together before you get to Endgame, you don't understand what's going on. I'm not going to talk to you about Endgame, first of all, because I haven't seen it yet. I'm going to start off with some of these Avengers that I've started to get to know. Now, of course, I've seen all the Iron Man movies prior to everything, but I hadn't seen Captain America, I hadn't seen Captain Marvel, I hadn't seen Black Panther, none of that. I hadn't seen it. I just hadn't taken the time to go to the theater. So I thought, okay, my summer project is going to be, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to watch these 21 movies. 21 movies that you have to see before you go see Endgame. And my best friend, Francesco, who is a Marvel freak, said to me, 21? You seriously are going to watch all 21? And I said, sure, I can get that done over the summer. Guess how many I have done? 13. I have 13 done already. Because when I saw Captain America, I went, there's a sermon in that movie. Now, what I should tell you is that I could preach on Captain America and Iron Man all summer long and never exhaust the sermons that you could get out of just those two movies. I'm going to be trying nice and try to include Thor. I'm going to try to include the Hulk. I'm going to try to include Black Widow and even some Hydra and Loki. If you all know what I'm talking about, keep it to yourselves. Don't make any spoilers. But I am going to remind you of this. I am going to be talking about movies that perhaps you haven't seen. So maybe what your summer is going to be spent doing is watching Marvel movies. Next week, we'll be talking about Iron Man, so see Iron Man 1 for next week. But today, I'm sorry if you haven't seen Captain America, you're going to get a spoiler from Captain America. So I'm watching Captain America, and I'm just enthralled with what I'm seeing on the scenes. I don't know if you know this about me, but I am always good for a good versus evil kind of show or a good versus evil kind of book because I fancy myself as one of the Avengers, the good guys out in the world making sure that all of the good that we can do is being done. I'm enthralled watching Captain America, and all of a sudden I hear, that Holy Spirit tapping on my head going, do you hear what he's saying here? It was really early in the movie. Do you hear what he's saying? And so I stopped and I ran the movie back a little bit and I watched it again. And I thought, holy cow. If that's not the message of the gospel that Jesus has been trying to get us to understand for millennia now, I don't know what is. The message of being involved in something that is greater than ourselves. The message of leaving ourselves behind and going into the greater purpose in this world. So we'll start today with this little clip that I have from Captain America, and I want you to take notice of his attitude and the things that he is saying as we go through this clip. What you heard in that clip was Steve Rogers wanting to be a part of something greater than himself. Steve Rogers was bullied. He was the little guy. He had been rejected from joining the armed forces in World War II 5 times. But he still kept trying because, as he told his best friend Bucky, it's not about me. He was born with that desire deep down inside of him to be a part of something that was good, something that was greater than himself, something that he could contribute to, and make a difference in this world. And perhaps maybe the most prophetic line in that whole scene is when he says to the guy, Dr. Erskine, that he doesn't want to kill anybody. He just doesn't like bullies. He doesn't like bullies, and he wants to go into the world and try and get rid of that. People that hurt other people. When I heard the Holy Spirit tapping me on the head saying, listen, listen, what I began to hear were the words of the gospel. Jesus saying, if you want to follow me, you got to lay down your cross, or you got to take away what you want and put on my cross. You got to let me lead you where we're going, because where you want to go is only what you want. It's not about being a part of a greater something in this world. It's about doing what you want when you want to do it without any inconvenience. You see, Captain America, he was willing to be inconvenienced. He was willing to use and do his life in such a way that a sacrifice was going to be made. Now, in the church, sacrifice is a word that we don't like very well, do we? We don't like to hear that word, sacrifice. Can you sacrifice some time for this program? Oh, no, I'm too busy. Could you sacrifice a little extra to help support this? Oh, no, I can't. Sacrifice is one of those church words that we know we like to use about Jesus, because we like that Jesus was our sacrifice. But we don't necessarily want Jesus to put it upon us. We don't want to be inconvenienced. We don't want to be bothered. But the reality is that if we are going to be gospel-living people in this world, we have to become like Captain America, and we have to be willing to sacrifice everything we've got to be able to fight the good fight out there and bring about peace and justice and love in this world. We can't do that sitting off in the corner. We can't do that without trying over and over and over again. We can't do that without some sort of sacrifice. Now, a little bit of a spoiler. Steve Rogers is about 5'5" in this clip. It's kind of funny how that CGI makes Chris Evans so short, isn't it? Because we all realize that actor is actually about 6'3". But he is willing in this story to sacrifice the ultimate thing that he has for the greater good. He's willing to sacrifice his life. Because Dr. Erskine's going to give him a serum that they have created to try and make him into what they call a super soldier, meaning that he's all of a sudden going to come out of this sort of little sarcophagus thing, 6'4" with all these great powers. But going into it, he didn't know that he would come out of it all right. He was willing to be the sacrificial lamb and have it tested on him, knowing that there was a good chance that he might not make it out alive. Because for Steve Rogers, for Jesus Christ, the greater is what we're after, not the small. Of course, if you've seen the movie, you know that he does live through the serum. He becomes this great 6'4" guy with all these powers and his mighty shield that Tony Stark's dad makes for him. And all of a sudden, he becomes this weapon that is in our military, that then they don't let him use his powers. They just wanted him to be an example. But Steve Rogers, Captain America, he couldn't do that. He couldn't just stand by and not be a part of that something greater that we were trying to accomplish. You know, that does remind me of Jesus. Do you remember that in the scriptures, some people said to Jesus, just sit down and be quiet. We don't want to hear what you have to say. And Jesus is like, listen, I'm going to tell you how it truly is. Do you remember that even Jesus' family in one of the Gospels went to them and said, get him out of that house because they're going to think he's crazy and they're going to kill him. Make him be quiet. And Jesus says, go your way because I got something greater to do in this world. Do you remember that all of those Sadducees and Pharisees tried to tell Jesus that he was nothing more than a mortal man that was going to die on a cross. And he said, "You watch. I am a part of something greater." And he took that sacrifice. If we learn anything from Captain America, it is this: sacrifice is what we are called to in this world. We are called to give up something that we treasure and we love so desperately so that we can be ready to be a part of the greater good when we are called upon. You know how that looks in the world is, I want what I want when I want it. Don't tell me I can't have the fancy car. Don't tell me I can't have the big fancy house. Don't tell me that I can't have a 401k that I will never be able to spend because I deserve it. I don't want to sacrifice that. Everybody else in the world has it. Why shouldn't I have it? And don't let them come to take it away from me. It happens in the church too. I like things the way I like it in the church. I want it to be the way I want it in the church. You are not doing it the way that I want you to do it. I want it to be this way. Don't take away what I prefer. But if there's one thing that we learn from Captain America as well as learning from Jesus, it is that the world is not about us individually. It is about us collectively. It is about all of us having everything that we need. And we can't do that when there's some that have so much and many that have so little. The answer to those problems in our world is to become like Captain America and sacrifice a little bit. But we have to be willing to do that. We have to be willing to say, I want to be a part of something greater than myself. I want to be a part of what God is doing in this world. I want to let Christ lead me. I want to be awake when Christ calls. That requires sacrifice. And as I said, I know sacrifice is not a word that folks like to hear because it might hurt. It might hurt to sacrifice. But I have to believe that we are in this together, as I told the children, because that's what God asks us to do. God asks us to hold on to one another. God asks us to help one another. God asks us to lift one another up, to give what we have, so that all might know abundance, so that all might know love, that all might feel valued in this world. How are we going to do that without sacrifice? How are we going to do that without being willing to lay down all the stuff we want and take on the cross of Christ, which is sacrifice itself? How are we going to do that if we're not willing? So the message that comes to us from Captain America is, are you willing to be a part of the greater good? Are you willing to let go of some stuff that clutters your life so that you might be able to be a part of something greater than yourself? Because if the message of Jesus Christ wasn't greater than us individually, do you think it would have survived for over 2,000 years? It would have died in those little home churches that were being persecuted in his lifetime. If it's not greater than us, if God's purpose in this world is not greater than us, then why do we come here on Sunday morning? You see, I have an inkling that you do, that I do, that we all do want to be a part of something greater than ourselves. But in our great American understanding, you know what we do? We say, yeah, I'll be a part of it as long as it doesn't make me uncomfortable. As long as I don't have to be uncomfortable or inconvenienced, I'll go along. But the minute that pain, being uncomfortable, being inconvenience comes around, we'll say we're done. I don't want to do that. I can't sacrifice. I want us all to really think about what it means to be a part of something greater than ourselves in this world. We're going to find out next week that Captain America is the one who shows the great Tony Stark what it means to be a part of something bigger than yourself, because if you've seen Iron Man, you know he's in it for himself. And the minute he's inconvenienced, he doesn't like that. But in the end, he realizes that, yes, the greater good is more important than my individual desire. I have to ask, are you ready for that? Do you want to be a part of something greater than yourself? And if you do, then it is time to let Christ lead you. It's time to ask to be behind Christ rather than trying to tell Christ how you want it in the world, how I want it, how we all want it. That's a big if question in our life. If we are ready, willing, and able to be a part of something greater than ourselves. Amen.